I know when people hear the term perimenopause or menopause, they immediately think the conversation is going to be geared towards women. And I would love for the guys to stay on for this episode too, because I think there's some takeaways for them too. Like, why should somebody stay tuned and listen to this full episode, even if they're a guy?
That's such a great question. So thanks for asking. Perimenopause and menopause affects every single one of us. We have moms, we have grandmothers, we have aunts and colleagues and friends that are going through it. And it is profound. It's going to change that woman's life. And as a result, we know that women are often the epicenter of the household and community and family. And it is a rippling effect. Women not only have an impact in their family, but they have an impact in community and ultimately an impact in the world. And so if we want to have relationships that feel good, that are nurturing and compassionate, understanding what's going on with women during this profound, give or take 10 freaking years, everybody wins when we lead with compassion.
And everyone's impacted in some way, whether it's directly or indirectly. So I love the way that you put that. So like kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of it, like what are the signs that someone in their 20s or 30s are starting to see their hormones shift? Because I think a lot of times people wait until it's too late.
Yeah, there's a recent study of looking with the Mayo Clinic that looked at 5,000 women in menopause. Well, technically perimenopause and menopause. I think it was 46 to early 50s. And 87% of those women did not seek out care. And there were a number of reasons why. And this is well after 20s and 30s. And we'll get into when hormones really begin to shift. But number one, women, they were too busy. They felt like they had too many obligations and too many family members to take care of, and they just put themselves on the back burner. It's kind of what we've been told. Number two, there was a knowledge gap. They didn't understand that the symptoms that they were dealing with were actually menopausal symptoms, and also doctors weren't asking them like, "Hey, could this be menopause?" Or "You're going through menopause. Let me support you." And number three, they felt ashamed, and also very often they feel judged in the doctor's office when they bring up these issues that are going on in their body. And this is where we're missing. This is this big gap where we're missing the ability to take care of women. However, if we reverse a little bit further back, perimenopause happens as early as our mid to late 30s. And where most of my patients in the last 17 years that I've been taking care of, it's around 42 and 43 that they fall off that proverbial cliff. This is when they tell me, I don't feel like myself anymore. This is where they're snapping maybe at their partners or their children. They're noticing more irritability. They don't remember why they walk in the room. Their sleep. What is that anymore? It's completely elusive. And they're not able to function the way that they used to. And so I would tell women, yes, as early as your 20s and 30s to it be in your purview that this hormone transition is coming, but it's usually not until our mid 30s that we start to really pay attention.
And I know you've talked about that the modern world has kind of made things tougher for women with perimenopause. Like, what are some of the hidden things that people are doing that are wrecking their hormones more than they think?
That's a great question. I would say the first one is that many of us are just operating in survival mode. Again, another stat from primary care doctors is that the number one complaint of most patients, men too, by the way, is going to be stress. You ask a patient in the office, are you stressed? Yep. And I think we're operating in this level of stress and we don't even know it. We're just in this survival mode where we're running from one thing to the next. We're constantly on our phone. We're checking our email. We're racing on deadlines and to pick up kids. And it just can feel like a rat race to the point that we don't even notice that we're living in this rat race anymore. So that would be the number one most insidious kind of silent, saboteur of our overall health span is going to be that chronic stress that we don't notice anymore. Number two is going to be what we put into our bodies. It's going to be important. Many of us are struggling with blood sugar variability or irregular blood sugar. We don't know it. Many of us have some level of insulin resistance, or even 84% of pre-diabetic patients have no idea that they have pre-diabetes. So that's another big one. And the other one is you and me, Doug, we probably sit in front of these computers. I don't know. What do you think? 5-6 hours a day, give or take. And so many of us are living on accident a sedentary lifestyle, just more sedentary than our bodies would love. So movement becomes really important, not only in perimenopause, but throughout our entire lifespan.
So if you were to rank order like the things that are most important to focus on, would you say like, stress is at the top as far as hormone stuff? Like where would you rank order? So if we were to break it down, stress, sleep, exercise, nutrition, relationships, like where should people like really pay attention?
This may surprise you, but the biggest predictor of a good health span, so a good, healthful life, especially as we get older, is going to be community and connection. We know that loneliness and isolation, we're attributing it to like the equivalent of 15 cigarettes a day. It's just not good for premature aging. So that would be number one, is spending time. And the beautiful thing about that is there's so many ancillary benefits to being with people who get what you're going through. Number one, it reduces stress. Number two, like not feeling alone, like knowing that people are in this with you. Just, there's a lot of not only compassion, but you're more motivated. You feel more confident. You're going to take more initiative in your health habits. But the other thing I would say in terms of priority, besides connection and community, sleep. Sleep is a big one, I would say. If you're wrecked the next day because you didn't get good sleep, well, your stress levels are going to be high and you're going to barely crawl through your day. So community, sleep, movement. I know these are I'm like, gosh, how do you even prioritize these? Movement, especially throughout your day. And then managing stress, nutrition, that would be my list.
So I know when it comes to like things like cognitive decline, I've heard there's a direct correlation between the time you really start to experience cognitive decline and when you like stop working, when you stop learning things, when you stop having purpose and meaning and all that stuff. And you can really help offset that by staying busy with work and community and working out and eating right and all those things for that. Does the same kind of thing exist with perimenopause? Like, meaning I heard you say that most of the time it's going to be late 30s, average in early 40s. Is there a way to like push that back? Can you do things to push that number back, so that people can enjoy, I guess, a few more years without it?
Yeah. So, Doug, I think you're talking about reproductive longevity because ultimately what perimenopause and menopause is ovarian senescence, where the ovaries kind of retire out. And as a result, we lose these hormones. As a result of losing these hormones, we see compromise in our vascular health, our bone health, our muscle health, our brain health. And so, can we push this back? We don't know. The research is pretty preliminary here. What we do know is how you can move it forward. So we know things that make it worse. Where women start perimenopause and menopause early, and those things are drinking, smoking, and chronic stress. Those are the three things that we know for sure. So those I would mitigate those at all costs, like as much stress as you can mitigate, as much smoking and drinking as you can mitigate, to extend your reproductive longevity. Natural menopause is anywhere between 45 and 55 years old. So that's a pretty big window. And ideally, the further out you are, the closer to 55, the more that you are shoving back chronic conditions down the road. And can some women be an outlier and be in their late 50s? Sure, but it's pretty rare. We're trying to figure out, are there ways to preserve these ovaries? I would say from the preliminary research, anything that we can do to support our mitochondrial health. So some of those things we talked about, sleep, hormetic stressors like exercise, things like being in the sauna and cold plunging, a lot of the biohacking things that you're seeing today, supplementation, circadian rhythm optimization. Again, we haven't really looked at women's health in this type of standpoint, but we can extrapolate from what we're looking at in terms of longevity overall.
I guess before we dive deeper into this, like, is there an equivalent for men? Like, I know, like, when you hear with men with aging, it's like they like loss of muscle mass, their testosterone levels are impacted. Like, what would you say is the equivalent of menopause for men?
I would say, yeah, andropause, loss of testosterone. And for both men and women, I don't know if you know this, Doug, it is the most biologically abundant hormone for both of us. We peak with testosterone, both men and women, in our mid to late 20s. And then it's a precipitous decline for both of us. By the time women are in menopause, it's about 50%. And for men, by the time they're in their, like in their, 60s and 70s, it's dropping. It's been dropping for quite some time. But there are things that drop testosterone in the modern day world. We talked about one of them already, which is stress. Another one is ultra processed foods and takeout. So testosterone hates toxins. So think about like the plastic, like even I'm drinking a coffee. My husband delivered this to me, which is so sweet. But this coffee has a plastic lining. You're drinking, you're drinking an iced coffee. It's in plastic. Testosterone hates plastic, let me tell you. And so a lot of these assaults, nutrient deficiencies like vitamin D can have an impact on testosterone levels. Not moving your body, so a sedentary lifestyle has an impact on testosterone. So if you're an average person eating ultra processed foods, maybe drinking alcohol at night, and you're not moving your body, maybe only clocking 3,000 to 4,000 steps per day, give or take, and you are eating a lot of takeout, there is a good chance your energy is low, your motivation and confidence is low, your workout recoveries just aren't the same anymore. Most likely it's low testosterone that's affecting you as well. And it's always, I'd say, in terms of looking at testosterone levels meaningfully, I recommend both men and women start testing their testosterone in their 30s.
And so do the same rules apply as far as like stress, sleep, relationships, nutrition? Like that's the same thing that's going to tank, male hormone levels as well?
Exactly. Yes. And the cool thing about men is that you guys can recover much faster. Because it's not as complicated. Like I had a friend of mine, I was at a house in Austin, I was doing a book tour, and I overheard a conversation as a guy friend of mine, he's in his like early 40s, and he was telling a massage therapist that he had just lost 12 pounds in a month and a half because he stopped late night eating. And he stopped eating after 8 o'clock. And that was it. That was the only thing he did different is he stopped late night eating, dropped 12 freaking pounds, Doug, in a month and a half. And I was like, one, like obvious, we are really insulin resistant. The body, I always say there's nothing that we're eating past like 8 or 9 o'clock that no one's picking up carrots. No one's eating broccoli, roasted broccoli at 9 o'clock. It's chips. It's some type of sugar. It's you're getting into the granola in the pantry. But the other thing is that I was kind of giggling and laughing is that if a woman just gave up like late night eating at night, there is no way that she would still lose 12 pounds in a month and a half. Like it just isn't going to happen.
And I've been a personal trainer for 15 years, and I've trained a lot of women, who are in that 40 to 50 to 60-year-old range. And what I hear a lot of times is they do everything right. They're coming in, they're lifting weights, they're, trying to, manage their insulin. They're trying to, eat a lot of fiber, protein, but yet they still feel foggy. They still feel, they still don't have the energy. They still feel off. Like what's going on there when they seem to be doing everything right?
It's hormones. I want, any partner or husband or any woman listening to this as well to just hear that women are not broken. Their hormones are erratically declining in perimenopause and menopause without permission, mind you. Like nobody asked for this in their 40s when they are handling like parents and kids and all the things. And as a result, we know that our hormones and our mental health, our cognitive health, our metabolic health, it's all bidirectional. These are all highly sensitive organ systems that rely on these chemical messengers and cell regulators. So particularly when it comes to weight resistance, as you've seen in your own, like you watch these women, they overtrain. Like they're like, Doug, like we're doing HIIT today. Like, let me, they're kind of like, what can you do? How much harder? How many more burpees do I need to do to lose this belly fat? And with estrogen declining, not only are we more insulin resistant, so we're laying down fat, body composition is changing. So instead of fat going to our hips, butts, and thighs, right, those reproductive year type of lay down of fat, now it's the belly fat, which is a spiral into insulin resistance and inflammation. We're losing muscle, 3 to 8%, and then towards late perimenopause and menopause, 5 to 10%. And if muscle was the thing that was holding it all together, your metabolic sink, and you don't have it, you're losing strength and you're losing mass, it's going to show up. On average, women in peri into menopause lose or gain 5 pounds of fat. Up to 20% of us will gain 10 pounds of fat or more. And so it is hormones that are playing a role. And it's probably sleep and it's probably stress. Like nothing's operating in a silo.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people, they assume it's one thing because of things that they're reading on the internet or even listening to podcasts like this, and they're not like doing the due diligence to check the boxes to make sure it's not something else. Because a lot of these symptoms, that you're talking about are very similar to somebody who doesn't exercise, who overly eats processed foods, who drinks a lot, who smokes a lot of weed, who doesn't have good relationships. So, do you is there like a checklist you make sure people go through before like chalking it up and just saying, hey, it's definitely this or that?
Yeah, so many things can be true. I will say that by the time somebody gets into their 40s, men or women, they have lived a life. So maybe they've had kids or they have animals that they're taking care of. There's been life stressors that have happened, big transitions that have happened. I don't know about you, Doug. I don't know how old you are, but I was in the Pop-Tart generation. Like I grew up on ultra processed foods. I grew up on McDonald's. I didn't really figure all this out until I was in my 20s. I drank Diet Pepsi. And so many of us, have grown up with ultra processed foods, have grown up maybe living a sedentary life. Maybe you've been in an office job for now 15 years. And so by the time you get into midlife and hormones are beginning to tank, think about hormones as a protective shield. And as they begin to falter, all of that begins kind of crashing into you, where maybe you had been holding it at bay, but now everything is coming up for review.
And why do people gain like weight in specific areas when their hormones change? Like, why is it always like the areas that people seem to be the most like,
the most dangerous? I
yeah.
was going to say even more dangerous. There's I would say for women in particular, estrogen was that protector hormone. Estrogen is the reproductive hormone. Obviously, it's doing a lot more in the body than just that. It's managing and supporting metabolic health. But as we lose it, it's kind of like our ability to place fat where it really needs to go kind of goes to the wayside, and our bodies just start depositing it. Some would argue, and again, it's every single woman's a little bit different, that as estrogen declines, testosterone, we become more androgenic. And where we see a kind of a testosterone based profile is going to be belly fat. But I would say not every single woman in perimenopause has a, dominant testosterone dominant ratio to estrogen. Usually it's still the opposite. I think it's that decline in estrogen where fat just kind of goes into this middle area.
And when it comes to nutrition, like how would you design a nutrition plan for someone who, let's do it both ways. Let's do it for someone who's trying to maximize their hormones like in their 20s and 30s. And I know we've talked, generally about some things, but I'd love to get kind of as specific as you can. And then we'll take it to somebody who's hit that perimenopause stage and how they can optimize things at that point too.
I love this question because we live in a time where even our children are struggling with metabolic issues. I don't know if you know, 1 in 4 of our kids have diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and 1 in 3 have prediabetes. So by the time you're an adult, at least in today's world, we're already struggling with metabolic issues. And so I would be building a plate to build metabolic resilience. I would be thinking about blood sugar regulation. Like, how can we keep blood sugar stable throughout the day? Yes, we have more wiggle room in our 20s and our 30s. I think we all know that. And when I was growing up, with the Cosmo magazines and all of that, just all the magazines and all the information out there, the carb, kind of villainizing carbs, it was really about like eating to be thin. That was the name of the game. And I think we should be eating to be metabolically resilient, eating to build muscle and maintain good muscle mass even as a younger person. Again, a lot more wiggle here, but I would be thinking about, again, protein forward meals with fiber and healthy fats, micronutrient and antioxidant rich foods to protect the microbiome and protect microbiome diversity. Be thinking about as food as cellular information. Even as a young person, I would be thinking about food as, is this what I want my future brain to be made of?
I think one of the things that gets talked about a lot right now is fasting. And I think that people look at fasting as a tool to help with hormones, to do things like autophagy and stuff like that. But I know it can also be kind of detrimental to people if they're not doing it right. Like, talk about fasting and how it can impact hormones.
Yeah, the way that I think about fasting is I think about, again, circadian rhythm optimization. So I'm a big fan of circadian based fasting. I also know that we become relatively insulin resistant as the night progresses. And so, for example, especially if we're talking to, I don't know, Doug, if mostly it's midlife people that are listening to this, men or women, right? Talking about that case with my 40-year-old friend who was eating after 8 o'clock and was putting on weight. So I think about if you have salmon and veggies for dinner and you have salmon and veggies at 6 o'clock in the evening, I've looked at a lot of continuous glucose monitor data over the years, like over the last 5 years, hundreds of people. So I have a lot of data points. And if you eat that meal at 6 o'clock, your blood sugar is going to be pretty darn stable. You're not going to be in a fat storage mode. You're going to have, and it's going to stabilize out before bed. But if you eat that same meal, I'm talking salmon and veggies at 8:30 p.m., it's going to look a lot different. You're going to have more blood sugar variability. And so my recommendation is early time restricted eating. Try to eat as early as you can in the evening, at least 3 hours before bed, and then don't eat anything like at all until the next day when you're breaking your fast with a metabolically healthy meal. So a protein forward, savory meal. That would be my recommendation. And if you give your body 12 to 13 hours to just clean up the mess and optimize your metabolic health, create more metabolic flexibility. I mean, it's as simple as that as a starting place without wrecking your hormones, optimizing your insulin sensitivity, ghrelin and leptin, and, and again, not feeling like you're starving yourself during the day.
And so what I'm hearing you say is, I guess the way I'm understanding this correctly is really like, for the most part, like nothing really should change as people age. Like if you're eating well in your 20s and 30s, you should keep that up into your 30s, 40s, and 50s, and then like try to make small tweaks here and there, as needed, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really of the mindset that blood sugar variability, I think insulin resistance is one, I feel like it's the number one risk factor for cardiovascular disease, but weight gain is on the back end, a side effect of insulin resistance. So if we can get that under control, and the best proxy to measuring insulin every single day is looking at blood sugar levels. If we can look at that in a meaningful way for each and every one of us. I mean, if I can wave a magical wand, I would get a continuous glucose monitor for every adult, so that they could just look and see like, damn, I probably shouldn't have had that mango at 9 o'clock at night, or, or a bag of chips or whatever it may be. Or maybe I don't eat grapes by themselves. I always pair that with some type of cheese or protein. And, the more that we can keep stable blood sugar throughout the day, and we have this break where we're not consuming when we're in a fat storage mode, so that's late at night, we can keep good metabolic health, most of us, and then punctuate our day with as much movement as possible.
And speaking of movement, and you talked about like high intensity interval training earlier, and like I've seen people overtrain.
I've overtrained.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, right? But I think it's more important when you're having hormonal issues, because now you're like wrecking your hormones even more, because exercise does create a strain on your hormone levels, obviously, right?
I mean, it's a stressor. That's the whole point.
Right. Um, so if you were to design a workout program for somebody, like what would that look like so that they can have the maximum hormone benefit, they could have the best possible experience with perimenopause, etc.? We will get you back to this episode of the Adversity Advantage in just 1 second, but first I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Timeline Nutrition. Some of my main priorities right now are optimizing my health, wellness, and longevity. And as many of you know, I've been a fan of Timeline Nutrition and MitoPure for a really long time, especially these new longevity gummies. And right now, Timeline has a special offer that you can get 20% off your first Timeline purchase. And there's never been a better time to experience the benefits of MitoPure. And if you use my code Doug at checkout, you will receive 20% off today. If you've been thinking about trying Timeline, this is your sign. Once again, they're offering my audience a 20% discount on all first-time purchases. So use code Doug at checkout to get 20% off, or go to timeline.com/Doug to get 20% off. Again, timeline.com/Doug to get 20% off your first purchase of MitoPure and Timeline Nutrition. Now back to the show.
So if like magical wand, they're in good condition, they have capacity. Okay. So strength training, 3 days a week. And I would say 30 minutes max. Like, let's be intentional. I don't think you need to be in there the whole 55 minutes. I think we can get it done in 30 minutes and get out the door. I'm not trying to waste people's time. Walking or movement after meals for the metabolic component. If you've got capacity, 20-minute to 30-minute HIIT session every single week. If you can't do that, little mini HIIT workouts, I call them exercise snacks, like work mini hit bursts throughout your day, jump squats, jack squats, mountain climbers, burpees if you love them, like whatever, get in where you fit in. But whatever revs up your heart rate, punctuating your day with 2 to 3 minutes of those. And then maybe one session of sprint training where you're going all out for 30 seconds, a couple times over 5 minutes, because that you want to burn fat. That's one of the fastest way to do it. And that's what I would do. And then I would build in just walking throughout your day out in nature as much as possible to regulate your nervous system and to just kind of clear your mind. Give yourself some self-care. That would be my ideal.
Yeah, walking is so underrated. And I think it's underrated for a variety of reasons. I think it's underrated because it's a great way to get steps in. I think I just saw a paper just came out a couple days ago that was saying that like I think the sweet spot now is like 7,000 or something.
Yeah, 7,500. You're active.
Yeah.
Gosh, the benefits of walking are endless. And it's pretty accessible to every single one of us, no matter where you are.
Yeah, and I think that there's therapeutic benefits to it. There's like family benefits. Like I know as a trainer, one of the things I always used to tell my clients when they were looking to get more movement in was to like take a family walk like after dinner or something like that, or to take a lunchtime walk, throughout the day or during like your lunch break at work. Because I think sometimes people try to make it like more challenging than it is. Like obviously the standing desk thing, and people have like ellipticals, beneath their desk, and I think that's all good. But I think all you need to do is get outside and walk.
Get outside. Like you want to balance your blood sugar, get outside and walk. You want to reduce the amount of stress you're dealing with, connect with your family, catch up with a friend, either on the phone or in real life. Like in terms of digestive support, really supporting muscle and glucose variability. There's just so many benefits. And when you're walking consistently throughout the day, your sleep's going to be better, your energy is going to be more improved, and your mental energy. When women come to me, it's not the physical energy that's the issue, it's the mental energy. They can't think, they don't have the same alertness and focus and concentration and productivity. And walking can really make a game changer out of feeling more mentally sharp.
And I think that when it comes to mental well-being, I think like eating well, exercise, all these things can be very helpful. But I know there's like if you don't have a good home life, or if you can't manage your stress effectively, if you're not sleeping well, like it's going to offset all the other stuff that you're doing that's positive, right? So like what are some things that you either personally do or you advise the people you're working with to make sure that they're like doing whatever they can to like manage their stress and their home setup in a way that's not going to, negatively impact their hormones?
Yeah, let's make this simple. Let's make this really easy, because I think the brain is always looking for it's got a negativity bias, right? It's always looking for a problem to solve. I have a mantra that's nothing is wrong, because my brain just wants to figure out something that's wrong to solve it. So I say bookend your day, your morning and your evening, especially if you're a dad or a mom listening to this, or you've just got people in your house that you're taking care of. Before your life becomes their demands and their obligations, carve out like 10 minutes for you. If that means having to get up 15 minutes before everyone else, it's worth it. If you can bookend your day with time for you, whether that's a gratitude practice, a movement practice, going outside and getting some sunlight on your eyes, or grounding in your grass, or just drinking your favorite coffee and tea, just a moment for you, I feel like you have more capacity for the messy middle in the middle of your day. So that would be number one, just carving out time. And ideally, I always think about how can we habit stack? So for instance, when I'm brushing my teeth, in that process of getting ready in the morning, I'm doing squats, like I'm moving my body, I'm waking my body up. And so I anchor to a lot of my existing routines, more healthy routines. If you're finding that you're really struggling, like big life circumstances are happening, a move, a divorce, or, a loss in your life, it's every one of us deserves a therapist. Or at least a friend that we can connect with. And I think the one thing I can offer is get clear on what brings you joy. Both men and women, a lot of us have no idea what we even love to do, what we do. And so I always recommend people grabbing a piece of paper just like this, folding it down the middle and writing 5 things that bring you joy that are free on one side, and 5 things that bring you joy that cost a little bit of money on the other side. And then after you get that list and you're clear on the things that light you up, program those into your phone, like schedule them like their dates. So those would be the types of things that I would do. Like the more that we can create joy and do the things that we love with the people that we love, like it really changes the game in terms of how we feel and how our hormones are functioning, particularly our stress response, adrenaline type hormones.
I think one of the other things that would probably be helpful too is like their perception of it. Because I know that a lot of people see things like perimenopause, menopause as something like super negative, and I can understand why, given like what happens, right? But the reality is, you can't really change it, as we've said. Like you can't change like the time it's going to happen or when it's coming. Like it's coming. Um, how can people shift their mindset around that so they see it? There's some silver lining in this change.
Yeah, I think of perimenopause and menopause as a time of discernment. And I think what's coming up is, yeah, when you have all these symptoms, all of a sudden you're negotiating with yourself about what you have bandwidth for. But what if, like, the way that you think about that is I get to have clarity and discernment around what is a full body yes and what is a full body no? How am I establishing boundaries? How am I getting clarity about what are non negotiables for me? And how am I prioritizing myself so that I am stepping into that next chapter? Again, when we're going through this transition, we are standing on our hard won lessons and our successes and our wisdom. And we don't have to think about this as a decline. We get to think about this as an upgrade into a more true version of you, a version of you that prioritizes you, and a version of you that is clear on the level of freedom that you want to have in the second half of your life. And so depending on that reframe, as we step into the unknown, into our 50s and beyond, you just get to decide. You're like, how do I want to live this second half of my life? Who do I want to spend it with? And who do I need to become to be that person? And there's so much that we can do to shore up our health so that we have the energy and capacity to do what we love in the second half of our life.
Discernment. I love that because I think it's so important for people to make better decisions around who they spend time with, their actions, their behaviors, their habits. We talked at the beginning about relationships, and saying that like, men should really care about this, which I totally agree, because you want to be able to better understand this and be able to have a good relationship and not have things kind of go sideways.
Blow up.
Yeah, because of a guy's inability to deal with this. So like, what do you think are the best practices for people as in a relationship to support each other and to have like open dialogue around this topic we're covering?
I love this question because I think you and I both know that the stats around divorce are pretty high in this time. I would say the most common age for divorce is going to be 45, 46 years old. So midlife. And it's both parties. Women's bodies are changing, hormones are declining. It's a neuroendocrine transition. And I think the more that we understand that, both men and women, that this is a neuroendocrine transition, that the brain is fully up for review. And that's that whole discernment part. But that communication becomes super important. And communication with compassion. I've had so many of my patients tell me that, their husbands, their partners don't understand that they just don't have the same capacity because, they've been together for a long time and they've seen their wives or their partners do it all. And then all of a sudden she can't do it all anymore. And so there gets to be, I think it's a really beautiful opportunity for women to ask for help and to be more vulnerable about what they're going through. And I know women have been told to just kind of be stoic and just keep it to themselves, but that's not doing anyone any favors. No one can read your mind. And then men, be curious, and ask like, hey, I'm noticing like, I feel like something's shifting, changing. Are you okay? Like having those vulnerable conversations, and even every day kind of connecting in with each other and seeing where you're at. Was it Brene Brown? I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, where they both check in with each other about where they're at in their percentage. And based on who's got more bandwidth that day, they kind of take on the load. So I think it would be good for each and every one of us in our partnerships to be like, so are you at a 10%, a 20%? Like, where are you at? And then where am I at? And then from there, negotiate, what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest lies that ever got told about relationships is that it's 50-50. I think that when you meet someone, you have to like kind of match their energy. You know what I mean? You have to like make sure that you're dating someone that has the same level of interest in you as you do in them, right? But I think that when it comes to relationships, it's like sometimes it's going to be like 90-10, or it's going to be like 60-40. And I'm sure there'll be times where it's 50-50 as well, but it's like most of the time, like it's like this ebb and flow, right? And I think it's really important to have open dialogue, and also to like just pay attention to signs, right? Like if you're noticing your partner is stressed, then there's probably a chance that they're going to be more irritable. There's a chance that they're going to be overwhelmed. There's a chance that the stuff might not get done, right? And that's not a jab at their character. It's more like it's just life. And I think it's just people's ability to be emotionally intelligent and to pick up on these cues, I think, is an incredible skill to learn.
Yeah, and I mean, there's going to be days where both of you are only at 10%. And and you still got a kid in the house that needs to be taken care of. And I think when you both come to each other and you're like, where are you at? 10%? Like, oh, I'm at 2%. Like you collectively 20% in the room, and I think that there's something about a co-compassion for each other of just like, man, I'm so sorry. Like you're going through this. I'm going through this. Like, let's just make a pact that we're going to somehow find a way to get through this together tonight. And we get to start again tomorrow. And so, yeah, we're always checking in about like, who's taking over story time and who's doing bath time. And because at the end of the day, like the minutia and the mundane for many of us has to get done. And the more that we can communicate about like who's got a little bit more bandwidth to help out with something, that you guys are a partnership, I think that changes everything.
Yeah, it's a team approach, right? It's not like a me versus you, or it's not like this is what your role is, this is what my role is. It's got to be a team. And sure, there's going to be things that you're better at than your partner and vice versa. But at the end of the day, it's like the goal is how can you be a good team, through thick and thin? Because there's going to be times where, like, I mean, I guess speaking from the guy's perspective, and it's like, you have to be supportive of your partner when she's going through these changes, because there's going to be times where you are going through something and you're going to want some level of support, right? I know guys are afraid to ask for help at times, but you're going to need some help at times. So I just think it's got to be this mutually like agreed upon thing that like when you're going through it, like you help each other out. Like that's what a partnership is all about.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. You at the end of the day, kind of be reverse engineering. Like, what would you love? What would be the outcome that you would love at the end of the day? What would you like out of that partnership? Hopefully, compassion and connection. That you guys are connected, and we're more connected when we're feeling supported.
So I know cortisol can like really wreak havoc on people's lives and stress. And we were just talking about how like when people are stressed, like it can impact relationship in these ways, right? What's your go-to? Like just say like it's like 7 o'clock, you've had a day. Like what are you doing to dysregulate?
It's a good question. I love it. I had like some snarky answer, but then I was
You're like 2 bottles of wine. No.
exactly. I was
And you're like, well,
oh
it's good for
man.
the heart. I'll be good. No.
It's terrible for the brain
No,
though.
I know,
Like,
I know,
yeah.
I know, I know. I'm kidding.
So yeah, it's a great question that I think it's going to be different for every single person. That's not the answer that we're looking for here. But whatever works for you to wind down. Like I don't have time for Epsom salt baths and bubble baths. Like that is not happening. But I can make myself a tea, or I can make myself like a little like adaptogen blood sugar friendly mocktail, or spending time with your partner, like connecting over the day, and or maybe it's reading a really good book. And so I think it's important to have a nighttime routine that is anchored in self-care that kind of move the needle for you. And whether that is reading a book, maybe it's making sure the TV's off so that you're not doom watching or doom scrolling on your phone. Have your supplements stack. Maybe it's a sleepy tea. Maybe, for women, it's an oral micronized progesterone that's helping you to get to sleep. But if you find you're still wired and tired, like your brain is still moving a mile a minute, one of the things I find is just brain dumping. All the things that are in your head, all the things that you think you need to finish, just get it on paper. It's not a to-do list. It's just a dump. So it doesn't have to live in your brain. It lives on paper. And you can come back to that another time. Have, maybe a breath work or a meditation. I love the 4-7-8 breath where it's a longer exhale. But I find from my patients, my women and my men, that if they can get all that stuff on paper before bed, it's a game changer.
Yeah, I think it's an important. This is an important question, because I think that what happens is, and I talk about this a lot, is people have a bad day and that becomes like a bad week. That bad week turns into a bad 2 weeks. 2 weeks turns into a month, and then you look back, it's like 5 months from now, and your life is chaos, because you didn't figure out how to like kind of course correct in that moment. And speaking of course correcting, let's just say I have like a 28-year-old who's listening to this right now. And they're like, Dr. Mariza, I've loved your episode on this podcast. Love your insights. You know, give me the the quick blueprint for things I can do starting today to not wreck my hormones in my 40s. What would they be?
Number one, track your cycle. That is your monthly report card, and you knowing your baseline is everything because your sleep, your movement, what you eat, your stress is going to impact. That is a proxy. It's a vital sign. That'll be number one. Number two, get your labs ran annually if you can so that you, again, have a timeline of what is going on with your labs so that as you get older, as you move into your 40s, when a doctor's like, this is normal because the ranges are so massive, you're like, actually, it's not normal for me. Something isn't right. So you've got validation. And if something's coming up, I feel like society at large has done a really great job, particularly for women, telling them to not trust their intuition. Just like, don't believe that. Just keep going at all cost. Trust your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, go and seek support.
Dr. Mariza, anything else you'd like to add to our combo that we didn't cover that you think is important when it comes to this stuff?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the stress thing really quickly. I know this may feel a little bit cliche, but it is a game changer for me because some days are not great. I'm not going to pretend, Doug, even though I'm doing all the things, some days are downright crappy. And every night I end my nighttime routine with a gratitude practice, but it's a different one. I have two. I have one in the morning and one in the evening. And the one in the evening is I go back and just kind of remind myself of all the things that went right for me to that day, even when the day was crap. And I can always find things that worked in my favor, that weren't against me, that were actually working for me. And going to bed with that mindset of like, actually, there's a lot of people backing me up and helping me out. There were a lot of things that went right. And knowing that tomorrow is another day, like we always get a reset. We always get a restart. My son, he's doing this thing right now where he goes, ugh, and over a Lego falling through the seat or whatever it is. And I'm like, dude, or a whole Lego ship breaks. And I'm like, guess what? We get to start over. We get to rebuild. The world isn't going to end because, and I don't, it's more so like, hey, we get to redo, we get to reset. And I come from that framework and that mindset of like, I get to do this over again tomorrow and I get to decide how it's going to be. I think there's a lot of power in that.
Dr. Mariza, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to buy your books, if they want to connect with you on social media, where's the best place to do that?
Yes, so the book is available everywhere books are sold, including Audible and Spotify. If you're like me and you're a busy woman and you don't get to read, like I love reading books, but like, let's be honest, that's just not my reality. There's a reason why everyone's listening to this show is because they can listen to it. Although I'm sure some people watch it on YouTube as well. The book is available on Audible. I read the book. It's available on hardcover, ebook. If you want the bonuses, including workout videos and more recipes and lab guides and all the things, it's drmariza.com/book. You can find me on my podcast called Energize with Dr. Mariza. So if you've got a woman or you are a woman listening to this and you're in midlife and you just need to understand what's going on with your body, that is a great place. And on Instagram, it's at Dr. Mariza.
Well, thank you so much once again for coming on the show. I really love this conversation.
Thanks.